The mirage Raphael Singania gazed out of the floor-to-ceiling windows of his penthouse office. The Seattle skyline spread beneath him like a glittering carpet. At 36, he had built Horizon Technologies into a digital publishing empire worth billions. Every major newspaper and magazine wanted his story, the Indian-American orphan who coded his way from community college to becoming one of the world's most influential tech innovators. Mr. Singh, the board is waiting. His assistant's voice crackled through the intercom. Raphael straightened his custom-tailored suit and sighed. Another day. Another room full of people who either wanted his money or his influence. He'd dated celebrities, models, and fellow entrepreneurs. But every relationship had ended the same way, with a painful realization that they were attracted to what he represented, not who he was. "Tell them I'll be there in 5 minutes, he replied, picking up the antique pocket watch that had belonged to the only person who had loved him unconditionally, his grandfather. The inscription inside read, "Your worth isn't measured by what you own, but by who you are when no one is watching." That evening, after firing his 7th personal assistant in 3 months, Raphael made a decision that would change his life. He would step away from his company for 3 months, citing burnout to the press, and live as an ordinary person in a small coastal town called Harborview. No mansions, no private jets, no entourage, just Raphael, or Ray as he would call himself, trying to remember who he was beneath the wealth. 200 miles away, Olivia Bennett was closing her struggling independent bookstore, Forgotten Chapters, for the night. At 32, she had poured her heart, soul, and savings into creating a haven for book lovers. The store was charming, with its mismatched armchairs and fairy lights, but it was also 3 months behind on rent. "You should consider Mr. Whitaker's offer," Liv said her best friend Damon, helping her stack the remaining books from their poetry reading event. "The community center needs an activities director, and the salary is decent." Olivia shook her head, her copper curls bouncing with the movement, and abandoned this place. "Every book here has a story that deserves to be discovered. I'm not giving up just because Amazon exists." "Nobility doesn't pay bills," Damon replied gently, "and neither does stubbornness." Olivia knew he was right, but she couldn't let go of her dream. She had built Forgotten Chapters after her mother's death, using the insurance money in her literature, to create something meaningful, in a world increasingly dominated by digital content and corporate giants. I've got 3 promising ideas to increase revenue," she said, pointing to a notebook filled with marketing plans. "I just need someone to help with the technical side. Website improvements, social media strategy, practical things I'm hopeless at. Maybe you'll meet a tech genius who'll work for coffee in your charming personality," Damon teased. Little did Olivia know that the following Monday, a quiet, unassuming man in faded jeans and a simple button-down would walk into her store, asking if the help wanted sign in the window was still valid. "I'm Ray," he said, extending his hand. "I have some experience with websites and social media, and I'm looking for something meaningful." Olivia looked at him skeptically. He seemed intelligent but out of place somehow, like someone who didn't quite know where he belonged. His accent was refined despite his casual appearance, and his hands were too soft for someone who claimed to have been between jobs for a while. "The position doesn't pay much," she warned. "Just minimum wage and all the books you can read during breaks." Ray smiled, a genuine warmth reaching his eyes that had become rare in Raphael's world. "That sounds perfect, actually. I'm not really in it for the money." "Everyone's in it for the money," Olivia replied, her pragmatism showing through. "But if you're willing to work hard for very little financial reward, I won't stop you." "Can you start today? The website has been down since yesterday, and I've got a shipment of rare first editions arriving tomorrow that needs to be catalogued." As Ray nodded and followed her to the small back office cluttered with books and antiquated computer equipment, Raphael Singania could have bought the entire building with what he spent on his last vacation, something he hadn't experienced in years, the simple pleasure of being needed for his skills rather than his wealth. What Raphael didn't know was that Olivia had her own reasons for keeping people at arm's length. After watching her creative, free-spirited mother waste away from cancer while still holding onto optimism until her final breath, Olivia had become fiercely practical. She had no patience for dreamers without plans or privileged people who didn't understand real struggle. "Just so we're clear," she said as she handed him a stack of inventory sheets, "I need someone reliable, someone who shows up every day and doesn't disappear when something better comes along. Can you be that person, Ray?" He held her gaze, feeling an unfamiliar flutter of uncertainty. For the first time in decades, Raphael Singania was being judged purely on his word, with no safety net of wealth or power to catch him if he failed. "I'll be here," he promised, "for as long as you need me." The encounter. Olivia arrived at Forgotten Chapters at precisely 7:15 a.m., following her daily ritual of stopping at Harbor Brew for her cinnamon latte. To her surprise, Ray was already waiting outside, a cardboard tray with 2 coffees in one hand and a paper bag in the other. "I remembered you mentioned you like cinnamon in your coffee," he explained, offering her one of the cups, "and I grabbed some scones from that bakery down the street." Olivia accepted the gesture with a hint of suspicion. In her experience, unexpected kindness usually came with expectations. "Thanks, but you don't have to do this to keep your job. Just fix the website like you promised. Already done, Ray replied, following her inside. I worked on it last night after I got home. I also set up an Instagram account and linked it to a new Facebook page for the store. Olivia stopped unlocking the register and looked at him with genuine surprise. You fixed the entire website overnight? Ray shrugged, suddenly. It wasn't complicated, just some back-end issues and outdated plugins. I had trouble sleeping anyway. The truth was that Raphael had stayed up until 3 a.m. entirely absorbed in rebuilding Forgotten Chapter's online presence. The modest rental cottage he'd secured under his alias felt more peaceful than his mansion ever had, and the simple task of helping a small business had given him more satisfaction than his last 3 corporate acquisitions combined. Over the next few weeks, a rhythm developed between them. Ray would arrive early, often with coffee or pastries, and Olivia would pretend to be mildly annoyed by his cheerfulness while secretly appreciating it. The store began to transform under their combined efforts. Ray modernized the technical aspects while Olivia curated intimate literary events that drew increasing crowds. I don't understand why you're still here, Olivia remarked one evening as they reorganized the classics section. You're obviously overqualified. You could be making 6 figures at any tech company in Seattle. Ray carefully shelved a leather-bound copy of The Great Gatsby before answering, maybe I needed a break from that world. So this is just a sabbatical for you, slumming it with the common folk before returning to your coding kingdom. There was an edge to her voice that took Ray by surprise. That's not what I meant, he said quietly. I've spent most of my life chasing success by society's definition. It never made me happy. Olivia softened slightly. And reorganizing dusty books does. Being here does, he admitted. Working with my hands, seeing immediate results, talking about literature instead of profit margins, and working with someone who's passionate about what they do. Something shifted between them in that moment, a door opening just a crack, letting in possibilities neither had anticipated. Their worlds continued to collide in unexpected ways. During a rainy afternoon with few customers, Olivia discovered Ray's extensive knowledge of literature when he effortlessly recommended obscure titles to match readers' preferences. Later that week, Ray watched in admiration as Olivia stood her ground against a real estate developer trying to pressure her into selling her lease. You could have been more diplomatic, Ray suggested after the man left. He might have connections that could help the store. I don't play nice with people who try to intimidate me, Olivia retorted. My mother taught me that integrity isn't negotiable. Tell me about her, Ray said softly. Olivia rarely spoke about her mother, but something about Ray's gentle interest broke through her usual reserve. She told him about Elena Bennett, a literature professor who raised Olivia alone after her father abandoned them, who read poetry aloud during chemotherapy sessions, and who made Olivia promise to live deliberately like Thoreau advised. The bookstore was her dream before it was mine, Olivia concluded. She believed books could save people, give them windows into lives they hadn't lived, and empathy for experiences they hadn't had. She sounds remarkable, Ray said, thinking of his own parent strangers whose faces he knew only from photographs preserved by the orphanage. She was, Olivia agreed, but she was also impractical. She kept teaching until she physically couldn't anymore, refused better-paying administrative positions because they'd take her away from her students, and never saved for retirement. You don't approve of her choices? Ray asked. I loved who she was, Olivia clarified, but I saw how hard those final months were when the medical bills piled up. I promised myself I'd never be that vulnerable. This explained so much about Olivia's Ray realized. The financial insecurity of her past had shaped her into someone who valued stability above all else, the exact opposite of what she perceived him to be. As autumn deepened, their connection grew despite these fundamental differences. They shared late-night discussions over wine after closing, debated literature and philosophy, and gradually revealed pieces of themselves, though Ray was always careful to maintain his cover, redirecting personal questions and fabricating a past that wouldn't betray Raphael. Seeing Aenea's privileged reality, the deception weighed on him, especially after Olivia confided that her last relationship had ended because of dishonesty. He said he was divorced, but he was just separated and hoping I'd be his reason to finally leave his marriage, she had explained. I can forgive mistakes, but I can't forgive lies. One evening, during a successful book signing event they had organized together, Ray watched Olivia across the room as she animated passionately about a debut author's work. The small store was packed with people, a testament to their combined efforts over the past 2 months. You two make quite the team, observed Damon, appearing beside Ray with a knowing smile. I haven't seen Liv this happy in years. She's extraordinary, Ray said before he could stop himself. She is, Damon agreed, and terrified of depending on anyone. Her mother's illness took everything they had. Olivia worked 3 jobs during college to avoid student loans. She never mentioned that, Ray said quietly. She wouldn't. Liv doesn't believe in sharing struggles for sympathy, but I'm telling you because I see the way you look at her, and the way she looks at you when she thinks no one's watching. Damon's words lingered with Ray long after the event ended. That night, as he walked Olivia home in the misty rain, Sheltering under one umbrella, he found himself wishing he could tell her everything who he really was, how meeting her had awakened something long dormant within him, how for the first time in his adult life, he felt like more than the sum of his achievements and possessions. "You're unusually quiet," Olivia noted as they reached her apartment building. "Just thinking about how much the store's changed since I started," he said. "The customer count has tripled, online orders are up, and you're actually making a profit now." "It's been a good few months," she admitted, "but I keep waiting for the other shoe to drop. Good things in my experience don't last." Standing there in the gentle rain, Ray impulsively reached for her hand. "Some good things can last, Olivia, if you let them." She looked at their joined hands, then up at his face, vulnerability and caution warring in her expression. "People leave, Ray, they always do. I'm not going anywhere," he promised. The words sincere despite the lie at their foundation. When she rose on her tiptoes and kissed him, it felt both inevitable and impossibly a moment of perfect connection built upon a foundation that would soon be tested beyond what either of them could imagine. The fracture the winter air carried a biting chill as Olivia flipped the sign on forgotten chapters to closed. 3 months had passed since Ray entered her life, and for the first time in years, the bookstore was not only staying afloat but showing promising signs of growth. Their relationship had evolved from cautious colleagues to something deeper. Evenings spent cooking together in Olivia's small apartment, weekend hikes along the coastal trails, and quiet moments reading side by side when the store was empty. "I've been thinking," Ray said, organizing receipts at the counter. "We should consider expanding the children's section. The family reading hour has been bringing in new customers consistently." Olivia smiled. "Always with the ideas, but expansion requires capital we don't have." "What if we did have it?" Ray suggested carefully. "There are small business grants, community investment programs, loans that would put us further in debt." Olivia finished, her practical nature asserting itself. "I'm barely keeping up with the current expenses." Ray hesitated. As Raphael, he could solve her financial worries with a single phone call. The temptation to reveal himself grew stronger each day, but fear held him back, fear that the connection they'd built would crumble once she knew the truth. "Sometimes, you have to take risks," he said. Instead, "Easy for you to say." Olivia's tone sharpened unexpectedly. "You're living in a month-to-month rental, working for minimum wage by choice. This isn't a temporary adventure for me, Ray. This is my life." The word stung more than Ray expected. "I thought it was becoming our life," he said quietly. Olivia softened. "I didn't mean it like that. I need stability. Security. You're brilliant with technology, but you seem content drifting. Don't you want more?" The question struck at the heart of Raphael's identity crisis. As a billionaire, he had everything yet felt empty. As Ray, he had nothing but felt more fulfilled than ever before. "What if more isn't what we're taught to want?" he asked. "What if it's about meaningful work and connections rather than financial success?" "That's the philosophy of someone who's never had to worry about making rent," Olivia replied, frustration edging her voice. "My mother had the same romantic notions. She died with unpaid medical bills and left me to clean up the practical mess while grieving." This wasn't their first clash on the subject, but it cut deeper each time. Ray recognized that their fundamentally different perspectives on security were becoming impossible to ignore. The tension lingered through December, while their personal relationship deepened emotionally and physically. Their philosophical differences created an undercurrent of unease. Olivia began receiving calls from creditors again as the post-holiday slump affected sales. Ray noticed her growing more withdrawn, working later hours, skipping meals to save money. One evening in mid-January, Ray arrived at Olivia's apartment to find her surrounded by paperwork, her eyes red from crying. "What's wrong?" he asked, immediately concerned. "The building owner is selling to a developer," she said, her voice hollow. "They're terminating all existing leases with 90 days notice. Forgotten chapters will have to close or relocate by April." Ray sat beside her, mind racing. "We'll figure something out." "Maybe we can." "There's nothing to figure out," Olivia interrupted. "Commercial rents in this area have doubled in the last 5 years. I can't afford to move the store, and I've already used all my savings keeping it running." "There are options," Ray insisted. "We could look for investors." "Or investors?" Olivia laughed bitterly. "For a small bookstore with razor-thin profit margins. Be realistic, Ray." "I am being realistic," he countered, frustrated by his inability to help without revealing his identity. "You're not even willing to explore alternatives." "Because I've been down this road before." Her voice rose with emotion. "When my mother got sick, I watched her chase miracle treatments and financial assistance that never materialized. I learned then that hoping for rescue only delays the inevitable." Ray took her hands. "This isn't the same situation. I could help if you'd let me." "With what resources?" Olivia pulled away. "You've been working part-time at my store for months. You live in a furnished rental and don't even own a car. What exactly are you offering?" The words hung in the air between them, painfully accurate based on what she knew of Ray. Each day that passed made it harder for Raphael to reveal his true identity without seeming manipulative. "I have connections," he said finally, a weak compromise between truth and deception. Olivia's expression hardened. "So that's it. You've been playing some kind of game here, slumming with a small-town bookstore owner while your rich friends wait in the wings. That's not what I meant, Ray backpedaled, but the damage was done. Then what did you mean? Because for months you've acted like you're just a regular guy figuring things out. And now suddenly you have mysterious connections that could solve everything. The confrontation that followed was inevitable. Every insecurity, every fear, every difference in their worldviews came rushing to the surface. Olivia accused Ray of being directionless and unreliable. Ray countered that she was too afraid of vulnerability to accept help. At least I'm honest about who I am, Olivia said, her voice breaking. I've shared everything with you, my past, my fears, my dreams. But you deflect every personal question. 3 months together, and I still don't know anything concrete about your life before you walked into my store. The accusation was fair. Ray had shared his genuine thoughts and feelings but had fabricated or omitted most details about his background. I care about you, Olivia, he said, desperation creeping into his voice. More than I've ever cared about anyone. Words are easy, she replied coldly. Action is what matters. And what have you actually done except work at a job that barely covers your own expenses? The irony was crushing. As Raphael, he controlled resources that could solve all her problems instantly. As Ray, he appeared useless in this crisis. Exactly what he'd feared. What do you want from me? He asked finally. Olivia looked at him, exhaustion evident in her features. I wanted a partner, Ray. Someone I could build something lasting with. Not someone who treats life like a philosophical experiment while I'm fighting to keep my dream alive. That's unfair, he protested. Is it? Because right now, when everything I've worked for is falling apart, all you offer are vague promises and platitudes. The argument escalated until Olivia finally said the words that would haunt them both. You talk about meaning and purpose, but when real problems arise, you're just useless. The silence that followed was deafening. Ray stood slowly, pain etched across his features. I'm sorry you feel that way, he said quietly. Ray, wait, Olivia began, immediately regretting her harshness. No, you're right, he interrupted. I haven't been fully honest with you, and that's my fault. But you've judged me based on appearances from the beginning. You decided who I was the moment I walked into your store. He paused at the door. You deserve better than what I've been able to offer as Ray. I hope someday you'll understand that there are different kinds of value in this world, and not all of them can be measured in dollars or practical outcomes. As the door closed behind him, Olivia sank to the floor, surrounded by eviction notices and past due invoices, wondering why his words felt like both an apology and an accusation. That night, for the first time since he'd left his penthouse, Raphael Singania made a call on his private line. Jeremy, it's me. I need you to prepare for my return. There's something important I need to take care of. In her apartment, Olivia stared at her phone, willing it to ring with Ray's name. Instead, she received an email notification from Pacific Northwest Publishing Conference, an exclusive industry event she'd applied to attend months ago but had forgotten about. Surprisingly, her application had been accepted with all expenses covered. The timing seemed almost cruel. With forgotten chapters facing closure, networking at a publishing conference felt pointless. Still, she thought, professional connections might be her only hope of salvaging something from the wreckage of her dream. Little did she know that Raphael Singania was scheduled to be the keynote speaker at this very event, a fact that would change everything. She thought she knew about the man she had just pushed away. The revelation. The Pacific Northwest Publishing Conference sprawled across Seattle's Grand Meridian Hotel, a gathering of industry titans and hopeful independents alike. Olivia felt out of place among the polished professionals in her second-hand blazer, but the all-expenses-paid invitation had been too valuable to decline, especially now. 2 weeks had passed since her argument with Ray. 2 weeks of unanswered texts, empty coffee cups at her usual table, and a hollow feeling that transcended her concerns about the bookstore. She'd thrown herself into preparing for the conference, hoping it might offer some avenue to save forgotten chapters or at least connections for whatever would come next. First time here? Asked a friendly woman with a press badge as they waited for the keynote address. Olivia nodded. I own a small bookstore in Harborview, or I did. We're facing eviction. That's tough. The woman sympathized. Though you might find opportunities here, especially with Raphael Singania speaking. He's been redirecting Horizon's focus towards supporting independent booksellers. The name was familiar, but Olivia couldn't place it. The tech billionaire, the woman explained, founded Horizon Technologies in his 20s, revolutionized digital publishing, been out of the spotlight for months on some sabbatical, but this is his first public appearance since returning. Before Olivia could respond, the lights dimmed. A polished host approached the podium to introduce the keynote speaker with glowing superlatives about innovation and visionary leadership. Please welcome back to the public stage, the founder and CEO of Horizon Technologies, Mr. Raphael Singania. The audience erupted in applause as a figure walked onto the stage, and Olivia's world stopped spinning. It was Ray. Not the Ray. She knew this man wore a tailored charcoal suit that probably cost more than her quarterly rent. His hair was styled perfectly, his posture commanding, but the eyes to smile as he thanked the audience. Those belonged to the man who had fixed her ancient laptop and kissed her in the rain. Olivia gripped her seat, unable to process what she was seeing. The program in her hand confirmed it. Raphael Racing and net worth estimated at $8.7 billion. Philanthropist, innovator, digital publishing mogul. His voice, that familiar voice now addressing hundreds, washed over her as he began speaking about the future of publishing, the importance of physical bookstores, and a new initiative to support independent booksellers facing corporate pressure. During my recent sabbatical, he was saying, I experienced firsthand the irreplaceable value of community-focused bookstores. These aren't just retail spaces. They're cultural sanctuaries where ideas flourish and connections form. Each word felt like a personal message to her, though his eyes hadn't found her in the crowd. Olivia sat frozen, emotions cycling between betrayal, confusion, and a dawning, horrifying realization. She had called one of the world's wealthiest men useless to his face. After the speech, she moved mechanically through the reception, declining networking opportunities, her mind replaying every moment with Ray in this new, impossible context. Had it all been some billionaire's game, a social experiment at her expense? She was about to leave when a staff member approached. Ms. Bennett, Mr. Singhania has requested to speak with you privately. Following the staff member through exclusive corridors, Olivia rehearsed what she would say. But all words abandoned her when the door opened to a private conference room where Raphael stood alone, his back to the door as he gazed out the window. Thank you for coming, he said without turning, his voice now unnervingly familiar in this unfamiliar setting. Did you enjoy your experiment? Olivia asked, finding her voice charged with hurt. Was it amusing to play poverty tourist in my life? Raphael turned, and something in his expression, vulnerability beneath the polished exterior, briefly disarmed her. It wasn't an experiment, Olivia, it was an escape. He gestured for her to sit but remained standing himself. Every relationship I've had in the past decade has been contaminated by wealth. People see the bank account, the influence, the lifestyle, never just me. So you lied. For months, I withheld the truth about my identity, he corrected gently. Everything else, my feelings for you, my passion for literature, my belief in what you're building at Forgotten Chapters, was real. Olivia laughed bitterly. While I was counting pennies to make payroll, you could have solved everything with your pocket change. Would you have accepted help from a stranger who revealed himself as a billionaire? Or would you have seen it as charity or, worse, manipulation? The question struck uncomfortably close to her core values. That wasn't your choice to make, she countered. You robbed me of the agency to decide for myself. You're right, he conceded, surprising her. I started with good intentions, but I should have told you the truth weeks ago. I was afraid. You afraid? Terrified, he admitted. When we met, I was just Ray, valued for my actual skills and character. The longer it continued, the more I dreaded becoming Raphael in your eyes, someone whose worth is measured by wealth rather than character. Olivia stood, needing to move, to process. And yet you let me believe we were facing the same struggles. You watched me stress over bills knowing you could. She stopped, a thought striking her. The conference invitation. That was you, he nodded. I wanted to create an opportunity to explain everything, on neutral ground. There's nothing neutral about this. She gestured to the opulent room. This is your world, not mine. That's exactly my point, Raphael said earnestly. These trappings, the wealth, the power, their circumstances, not identity. The man who fell in love with you in that bookstore is more real than the public figure standing here now. The word love hung between them, spoken for the first time. You judged me when you thought I had nothing, he continued quietly. Called me useless because I didn't provide practical value during a crisis. Do you know how revealing that was? Olivia flinched. That wasn't fair. I was afraid and lashing out. I know, he acknowledged, but it reflected something true about how you measure worth. The same standard that makes you reject help and sacrifice joy for security. His insight cut too close to her core wounds. You don't get to psychoanalyze me after months of deception. I'm not, Raphael insisted. I'm trying to explain why this matters. Why the distinction between Ray and Raphael isn't just about money but about seeing people for who they are, not what they represent. Something in his sincerity reached through Olivia's anger. What happens now? She asked, her voice smaller than intended. That depends on you, he replied. Professionally, Horizon has a new program supporting independent bookstores with renovation grants and distribution partnerships. Forgotten Chapters would qualify regardless of our personal history. And personally, Raphael crossed the distance between them, stopping just short of touching her. Personally, I'm still the same man who fixed your website, who knows you take cinnamon in your coffee, who believes your bookstore matters. The man who loves you, Olivia. Whether you can forgive the omission is your choice, but the feelings were never a lie. The resolution spring brought renewal to Harborview. Cherry blossoms dotting the coastal walkways where Olivia had once strolled hand in hand with a man she thought she knew. Forgotten Chapters had relocated to a charming Victorian on Main Street, a historic building now owned by a community. trust established to preserve local businesses. Olivia had accepted the Horizon Independent Bookstore Initiative grant, but on her terms. The funding came with no special treatment, no accelerated timeline. She had insisted on the same application process as any other bookstore owner, refusing to leverage her personal connection to Raphael. The grand reopening was scheduled for tomorrow. The renovations had transformed the space while preserving its soul. More room for community events, a dedicated children's corner with whimsical murals, and a small cafe serving local pastries and, of course, cinnamon lattes. Olivia stood in the empty store after the contractors left, absorbing the culmination of her dream. Her mother would have loved this space, its charm, its potential, its promise of literary sanctuary for generations to come. The bell above the door jingled softly. "We're not open until tomorrow," she called without turning. "I know," came the familiar voice. "I just wanted to see it before the crowds." She turned to find Raphael dressed more like Ray in simple jeans and a button-down, but carrying himself with a confidence she now recognized as inherent to both identities. 3 months had passed since the conference. Their communication had been limited to necessary discussions about the grant, conducted primarily through official channels. This was the first time they'd been alone since Seattle. "It's beautiful," he said, looking around. "You've created something special here." "Thank you," Olivia replied, surprised by how natural it felt to see him again. "For the compliment and the opportunity. The initiative has helped 12 other bookstores already. 14 now," he corrected with a small smile. "We just approved 2 more in Portland." An awkward silence settled between them, heavy with unspoken thoughts. "How have you been?" they both asked simultaneously, then laughed, breaking some of the tension. "Busy," Raphael answered first, "restructuring Horizon's community engagement division, launching the bookstore initiative, reconciling my 2 lives." "I've been thinking about that," Olivia said carefully. "Your 2 lives. Which one was real?" "Both, neither." He ran a hand through his hair, a gesture so familiar it ached. "I was performing as Raphael Senior CEO long before I became Ray. The truth is somewhere in between, a person still figuring out who he is without defined roles." Olivia nodded, understanding better than he might have expected. "I've done some figuring out too, about why security matters so much to me, why I push people away when they get close." "And what did you discover?" he asked gently. "That protecting yourself from loss also means blocking possibilities for joy." She gestured around the bookstore. "This place exists because I finally took a risk on the grant, on the building, on myself." "I'm glad," Raphael said sincerely. "You deserve this success." Olivia studied him, this man who had entered her life under false pretenses yet had seen her more clearly than anyone. "I have something for you," she said. Retrieving a package from behind the counter, he unwrapped it to find a first edition of Thoreau's Walden, the book they'd first connected over during inventory. "I went to the woods because I wished to live deliberately," he quoted softly. "To front only the essential facts of life." She continued the passage. "You went to Harbor View for similar reasons." "I think I did," he acknowledged, "and found something I wasn't looking for." Another silence, less awkward than the first. "I've been unfair to you," Olivia admitted finally. "Yes, you concealed your identity, but I was equally guilty of judging based on appearances. I decided who Ray wasn't without looking deeper. We both made mistakes," Raphael offered. "The question is whether we can move forward from them." "I'd like to try," she said, her voice gaining certainty. "Not as Olivia and Ray, or Olivia and Raphael Senior, but as to people who see each other clearly now. No pedestals, no assumptions." He stepped closer. "I'd like that too, though I should warn you, Raphael comes with complications Ray didn't have. Public scrutiny, business obligations, charity galas. And Ray comes with baggage Raphael didn't acknowledge." She countered with a small smile. "Trust issues, stubbornness, a pathological need for independence." "Sounds perfectly imperfect to me," he said, hope warming his expression. Olivia closed the remaining distance between them. "I've missed you," she admitted. "The real you, whoever that is." "I've missed you too," he replied, tentatively taking her hand. "Every day." Outside, cherry blossoms drifted on the spring breeze as forgotten chapters witnessed a new beginning. Not the fairy tale ending of a billionaire rescuing a struggling bookstore owner, nor the cynical conclusion of deception revealed, but something more authentic, to people choosing to see beyond appearances, beyond past mistakes, to the truth of who they could be together. The next morning, as sunlight streamed through the Victorian windows and eager customers lined up for the grand reopening, Olivia stood behind the counter with Damon, who'd been promoted to assistant manager. "He's coming today, isn't he?" Damon asked, nodding toward the special display of books and authentic living they'd curated together. "He said he might stop by," Olivia replied, unable to suppress her smile. "As Raphael or as Ray?" Damon teased. Olivia considered the question as she unlocked the door. To welcome the community into the reborn forgotten chapters. "Neither," she decided. "Just as himself, that's enough." And it was.